mandatory. I'm sure the city didn't come in because this guy's view of a wall now is not going to work. But developers do that a lot. They'll go in with landscape to soften up the area and to beautify it and create some goodwill. You know, and that's a cheap way to create goodwill as opposed to go along with all the administration that went to get it approved. Throw in some goodwill there too, and maybe we can appease them some.
Yes?
Yeah, in countries and cities and areas where you have high density and you have residential against these high buildings, for example in Japan, they're using vertical landscaping as opposed to the horizontal landscaping, so they landscape against the hardscape. So it softens the appearance. So when you look across,
Like a green wall kind of?
green
Yeah.
wall.
On the other side of the development, there's a large parking garage with a ramp, and they made them put a green wall in it. This one didn't show it, but
So
they
there's-
put a grid on the wall, and then they put a vine. They get a vine to grow on the wall, and it does help to soften the wall. There's a great example of it in South Beach, where they wrapped the whole parking garage with a living wall. It's probably the best example I've ever seen anywhere in the country of a parking garage that has retail wrapped around the bottom, and landscaping is used in such a way where it's not really intrusive.
It's traditional to use that green wrap, but what they're doing is a 3D element where you think of a box or on your patio you have an extension that you build out and they actually go out and enough to put shrubs and so forth. So it really softens it. You may think it's a mountain or something as opposed to just a wall.
Well, and I'm going to kick in a couple more things since I do have a lot of knowledge of this project. To build the pedestrian bridges across, there was a time when the district wanted to vacate 35th Avenue entirely and make it a unified campus, but the city resisted that. So to get the pedestrian bridges though, we had to vacate air rights above a certain level in order to put the pedestrian bridges. And another interesting thing, if you go back to the picture of Joe DiMaggio, the other thing of the new Joe DiMaggio, we had a little bit of arm wrestling over signage because see all these big brightly colored graphics for the children's hospital? That all violated the city's sign code. And we had to research the importance of those kind of features in a children's hospital for the contribution to the health of children. You know, they're so fearful that you need to approach the physical design differently for a children's hospital than for a hospital of adults. So we eventually got variances from the sign code so they could put all of the children's hospital graphics up.
And that may explain some of the extra landscaping, because a lot of times when you ask for a variance, they'll say yes, but I want extra landscaping now to make up for your variance I'm going to give you. So I know it was needed to soften the project, but they may have thrown in some more landscaping.
Was that part of the deal?
Well, the landscaping, the district really, they offered as much as they could from the get-go on like the back of that building that you said is pretty harsh. I think that the district designers, they did as much as they could right out of the box, and then couldn't really do any more because they needed to fit the footprint of the building. So I mean, you can theorize about whether if this had been a commercial development, if any of these things would have been achievable here, rather than the hospital, which was so important to the community. It contributed to some of the contentiousness, though, also because it's a public hospital, which means that they take anyone, and they provide publicly supported, medical care that's paid for by the taxpayers. And we heard some nasty comments about the type of people that the hospital would be drawing to the neighborhood. And they opposed, before the HD rezoning was done, there was just a small expansion of the NICU to meet ACA guidelines where each bed had to have a private room. And the neighborhood fought that like you wouldn't believe. And it was, my law partner was almost crying in the public hearing. She's like, these babies are dying and you don't want their parents to have a quiet moment of privacy with them. It was heart-wrenching. It really was. So it was an interesting project.
The signage, was it a variance that was approved on what?
Like the middle,
This
the,
artwork
what
probably
basis?
was.
that one I don't think needed a variance, but it was the window graphics that needed a variance, because all of those kind of window graphics were treated just like a sign, just like a monument sign. And so it was much larger square footage than the signage code would have permitted.
And the basis for that variance?
All of this analysis that we did about the need
For a
to,
children's hospital.
for
So
children's hospital.
health, that was on the basis of
Yeah, it
public
was-
health, welfare.
It was, yeah, and that the use, the signage was serving that particular use.
So you had to do research to come up with a psychological benefit.
I did. I looked at graphics for children's hospitals and looked for studies and architectural analysis of all of that from around the country,
Wow.
so to support the justification. You know, and then it was a very different project because it was public too. I would get an occasional call about, well, we needed to move those trees and we didn't have time to wait for a permit. And I'm like, so they were, and honestly, they were given some leeway, I'm sure, because it was a public project and not just a private project for those kind of things. So it was.
The government doesn't sue itself.
Yeah, it's.
They don't fire themselves either.
Yeah, it's crazy how it works.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right.
All right, what do we have? One more? One more, that's it, all right. How much?
Are you the last word?
Last but
Last
not
one, yes.
Save the best for last. That's what she told me.
Thanks.
Today's artist index of avocados is the deal with every time I go to San Francisco, I get text messages. I get like the eggs with the salsa.
Watch me put your
No, it was good though. It was interesting. The future transportation of
development cost.
salad. I got one in your car.
Build this cold water.
That's the only one. I was just. Because you're talking about some other things but I think what's happening. I live in some.
I got the news. I have one class.
Copy of the animal party on the turnpike. All the way up here.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Our project is River Landing, and it's in Miami, it's on the river. Our agenda today, we're gonna do a summary overview. We're gonna review the site and the project, what happened with the staff, the recommendations, analysis, and later, the approval process. The objective of River Landing Development, which is a Hellinger company, was to include this project in a SAP, in the special area plan. As it was discussed before, as part of the city of Miami, and they wanted to change the zoning of this parcel of land, which is 8.1 acres, from T680, which allows up to 8 stories, to a T24 urban core that will allow a mixed-use project of approximately 2 million square feet of development land. The SAP, as it was discussed already, allowed parcels greater than 9 acres to be master planned. This master plan, what it's looking for is an integration of all the public areas, have great flexibility, and as a result, better design and specialized quality buildings, riverwalk and streetscape design. Since they were 8.1 acres, they obtained a waiver that with a 10% reduction in the minimum acreage required. This was obtained before starting the approval process. The approach of this project, since it's located within the Civic Health District on the Miami River, from the city perspective, it will allow much needed retail, residential, that it was in close proximity to the Miami-Dade County, and as well to the health district. As you know, there's Health District there, Jackson System Health System is there, and all the urban core. A lot of development is ongoing in the riverside, and it's being transformed. And this proposed will be integrated with another city plans to revamp the area: the Miami Green Corridor, Miami Health, the River Greenway Action Plan, and the River Corridor Urban Infill Plan. The staff, after the Miami Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board analyzed the project, then consulted, as you know, with the Day School Board, Transportation Department, Public Works Department, and one others, and finally they recommended the project to be approved with certain conditions. The final approval was successfully, they obtained the SAP, and they rezoned the property to T24-0 urban core. There were some comments from the staff, recommendations from the staff that they were disregarded. But anyway, it was approved. They wanted a sidewalk larger than 90 feet, and also they wanted the residential entrance change from the original plan, but it was approved. So that's basically what we're going to discuss in more detail right now.
Okay, our property is located on, the property is located on the river of Miami. They propose to develop 2 million square feet of retail and residences, increasing, as we explained, the density and the intensity of the current zone. The application, and this I'm going to go over a little bit further down. This is a special area district also, and they applied for it. And there are a lot of regulations. The Miami zone, Miami 21 is a special zoning for a certain area of Miami, which is divided in transects. Okay, transects are like geographical areas specific to with a current environmental similitudes that the form-based code of Miami is based on transit. The main concern about the city is when they're rezoning or changing anything is that their transit system is not messed up with. So this project originally, well, as planned, was going to be a $300 million project that will have retail, mixed development, retail, walk, live, work. It was going to be 475 apartments, and they're going to have a green space, actually more than what the city requires, and a new innovative 1,500 feet lineal riverfront green space, which is going to be new in Miami. Next. That's the side. Kind of blurry, but this is the river, and this is actually the site. This is what they were proposing. For your information, before you apply for a special area plan, you have to have everything for a pre-application. You have to have the architectural plans ready and done, okay? Everything has to be ready for a pre-application approval. For this process, sounds like a dream come true for a developer, but it could get into a nightmare because you can spend a lot of money for a pre-approval and you're not guaranteed that you're gonna get it. This is what the spatial area plan application entitles. It's 3 phases. A pre-application plan, which these people started, river development started on December 2002. Before this, they had to go to a waiver where since they had only 8.13 acres and the SAP, as per the Miami 21 code, requires 9 acres minimum, they had to go to a waiver before they pre-applied. This is very common. They go to school concurrencies. They have to have the architectural plans finished, okay? They have to go to introduce the plans to zoning and go to informal meetings with the works department, with the city, just informal. This, in the application procedure, then they get a letter to go to a technical review. On this technical review phase, they meet with the Urban Development Review Board, they meet with committees, different committees from different fire departments, police. They even have to have a letter from a mile away from 500, at least 500 neighbors of the area, surrounding the area, approving the project, or just a signature and the list of the neighbors, even though on this process there are no, this is a very mainly administrative process. It's no hearings. There's a lot of paperwork. All these technical review phase, they started on March. They went on and letters go back and forth. This is, as I said, it's just meetings within the city. After all this is on the the pre-application, the technical review, the zoning sends a letter for the application phase. Now they can apply for the SAP. In the application phase, the whole application is reviewed again by all the departments again, and they meet with the hearing board. They present the project. By then they have modified whatever they thought, the technical reviews thought that they had to be modified, and they present it to the hearing board. They schedule about the zoning board. If they comply with the conditions, it is mainly approved. It's a pretty smooth process. What this included, different than any other, was a rezoning for the T6 to 8, which was a maximum of 8 floors, to 24 floors. Of course, increasing the number of units to be built. This is just a basis of the cost to the city without, they charge $5,000 per acre, advertising. These are just city charges, okay? I couldn't even start to estimate the cost to doing the soft cost for a project this size. But just the city, the developer spent over $70,000 on pre-application stages, okay?
So when reviewing the minutes, I quickly noticed that for projects to get approved by the city, there has to be a lot of working together by each department. Luckily for this specific project, the developer did a really good job in having preliminary meetings with all the departments and the neighborhoods. And plus the city wanted to push this project forward, so they didn't really have any resistance going into these meetings. The most important meeting held was 059 of 2013. The two key speakers were Ms. Garcia Toledo and Alana Lopez. Well, I want to say that how important it is to have a good lobbyist and a good lawyer in these meetings, because Ms. Garcia Toledo was the lawyer representing the developer in this case. If you read the minutes, you would see how she expressed herself and how she sells the project to the chairman. She goes into detail in explaining why they wanted the zoning changes. They wanted the zoning changes basically because they didn't want the residential units to be small towers. They wanted they wanted the residential units to have a feel and a vibe in the area, and they wanted to create a walkable experience for the neighborhood. Ms. Garcia Toledo also in this meeting, she asked for slight changes in the conditions that the staff wanted in the project. Like my partner said, they wanted to have wider sidewalks, bigger than 90 feet. They asked to have that removed. They also asked to have less open space requirements, and they asked to leave the lobby entrance for the residential units where they were originally placed. And they placed them there with consent of the neighborhood. So the neighborhood people wanted the lobby entrance for the residential units there for traffic purposes. So she successfully did this. They took away all those conditions, and after those meetings, it was basically a yay for everybody, and they signed and reviewed the site plan on first 15 of 2014. So the staff analysis basically of this parcel of land was being underused. So this was going to create property was underutilized, and this is why the staff recommended to go ahead and with this project. The project was going to create 500 construction jobs, 600 indirect jobs, and after the development was done, there's going to be 1,000 jobs created by this development. So a couple of the referral findings. So we digged into the referrals, and we saw that they used a couple of departments from the city. For example, they submitted the review for the public school conspiracy preliminary, and the schools did say that they were at capacity for this project to be built. The CRC also jumped in April 16th and reviewed the project and provided some insight on the project. Public Works Department reviewed the project and revisions made comments based on what they saw. There was a traffic study submitted also, and the proposed project was also reviewed for design appropriateness by the Urban Development Board. And on the review board on March 20th, we recommended approval with the following conditions. So a couple of the conditions that the staff had were to comply with the minority participation and employment plan submitted to the city as part of the application for approval. The developer must submit interim plan, including a landscape plan, and record a certified copy of the development agreement specifying that the development runs with the land and is binding on the applicant. Yes. So yeah.
As we've seen, this type of projects are approved by the city because they
Finally, the final legislation was that the ordinance, City of Miami Commission approved the rezoning to T24. They also approved the SAP. So the property it was approved at that time approximately for 444 residential units, but now it's been built for 475. That was the end result. About 16 million square feet of commercial use, 130,000 open space, and 2,400 parking spaces. They made a top, or what do you say? A cap on the development square footage to 2.1. So it was very successful. Actually, it was very smooth, as Marisela said before, and what we concluded is,
Yeah, it was approved and of course, this goes along with the city's plan. The Miami 21 was originated, it was actually approved, I think, 2004 or 5. And it has some special conditions where you can, this is actually an amendment of the Miami 21. It was finally approved, all this process, I believe in May, as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. It goes along with the city's new vision under Miami 21, where they want new urbanism, smart growth, they want these all concepts tied together into these SAPs, or special area plans.
in addition to it, the Miami City Commission approved a $7.5 million bond that was to help with the infrastructure around the project.
So you see that cities and the developers working together in this type of special plan is like somebody else was saying earlier, the ideal project, because the community participates, the government and the developer work together, and a lot of red tape is probably waived. I personally believe that there has to be a limit to like a charade where before everything starts, and it actually, that pre-application procedure plans contemplates a lot of what I'm thinking. But this we'll see the results on this Brickell City Center first, which is going to be the first to be built, and of this size, and then this is supposed to be done and finished by 2018.
So, and also on a side note, at least what I got from this project is that usually these SAP projects and projects that are pushed by the government or the government wants them to be done, they're pretty smooth in the process of getting their approvals for what they're doing.
Yeah,
I
pretty
mean,
much.
instead of being a small developer going into a parcel and wanting to get a variance or getting rezoned, that's basically impossible. But they get all they want in these type of projects.
So I have a question about that. With the exception of the hospital project, which was a government project, everything was either a PUD or a SAP, which means that what's the purpose of all these zoning laws if every single major project that we do are in need of cutting the red tape and going outside of the system, which is exactly what a PUD and an SAP does, is it takes you outside of the zoning system and the ordinance system. So, I mean, and that's more of a question for you, if that's the direction we're going, what's the purpose? All it really limits is the small guy who doesn't have multi-millions of dollars and can't influence the government through lobbyists.
Or a small project and can't or won't or doesn't need to assemble land for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me
Because a
make a
minimum
comment
land
for that.
requirement can cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
Yes,
Nine
originally we were gonna do another project, it's a multi-gazillion dollar project in Key Biscayne. It's called Oceana, and was developed originally by Edgardo Fortune. And we met with the city planner, with the director, we thought that there was Fortune, the guy has been building forever, very well known, and the planner was the director was telling us it was a disaster. He never met ever. He lives in the Key. He never met with the planner. He never went to the committee to do technical or anything. And he spent a lot of money putting everything together, and he called a hearing.
He went through the process of what's
Yes.
here, and he presented a massive project.
Without consulting anyone. Of course,
And
he
what
was
happened? Denied?
Blown out.
denied,
As a
city lawsuits.
As a result of that,
You have
the
to
city of Key Biscayne is the only one, this is FYI, if you're ever gonna do anything in Key Biscayne, they changed the charter of the city, so any change of zoning, any change, whatever zoning, land amendment, has to go to a public hearing. That's the only
And
city
a
in Miami.
referendum.
And a referendum, okay, and every citizen has to vote for that. So that's just FYI.
So
that probably didn't apply for this class because there wasn't a change of zoning at the end, he merged or
He sold it to Constantini
and I
and,
don't know if he sold because there's some
Yeah,
maybe
so
something there, but
yeah.
There's a
they
deal happening.
I'm gonna say they merged and they built lower density and the product is being sold now like for $6 million each apartment of I don't know 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But they finalized, they sold it. It's a successful project, but they went through a huge process of
Huge.
yeah.
Huge, and a huge fight, etc. So
So our preliminary meetings are so.
my point is that
Do your homework.
do your homework. And, it doesn't have to be SAP or really a normal project. The developer, well-known developer, unfortunately, never did his homework.
Yeah.
And
Question?
I have a question. For example, for our project, when they requested, when they asked for, for the PUD, it was approved a couple of months ago. But they start breaking ground, they start building. So what happened if that gets denied? They already started. The PUD only allowed like 207 units to be, to be built. But if it gets denied, the plat has to change and everything has to change. I mean, how do they start building and doing all the stuff before, the PUD got approved?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it happened there, but sometimes, I mean, they could start land clearing, land development work, and the city, from the city's perspective, if they build under the existing zoning or they build under the new zoning, the land development work is gonna be the same anyway, so
I
it's
think
not.
she's talking about the decontamination. I think that would
No.
have to happen in any event, right?
Yeah, but my question is like the PUD was approved for, like Chad was telling me that, yeah, maybe they started, if in case they get denied, they still will have a certain amount of units, developed in certain area. But what happened, the PUD says, or their plat says that they're gonna build a certain amount of units. If that doesn't get approved, then they will have to reduce it because it didn't get approved, so the plat have to change and everything has to change.
Let me
Yeah.
answer you a little bit on that. It depends on the city, okay? You can do, I'm currently applying for a replatting of a piece of land, and I will get temporary permits to do work on the land that will not affect the final decision, okay? So with that process, I have to go to a hearing and come back, and then the pre-plat, and the pre-plat from the villa go to the city, and then it comes back. In the meantime, I could do work on the land that will not affect the final.
Right, it would be the same work, no matter if it's developed under the current zoning
Right.
or the proposed zoning.
That's basically the point I'm
Yeah.
making.
Yeah.
Things like the decontamination
Yeah.
and all of that.
So that's how, and, some cities have a different degrees of sensitivity to that and how far they will let you go. And sometimes the developer will have to sign kind of a hold harmless agreement that they understand that their work might be in vain. And they won't sue the city if that's what happens.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see this project because the cobbling that the Brickell project had, I'm happy to see that this project, subsequent project, has more process and more answering and hearing and so forth and so here. So I think they've learned from that one, or that one break them all, and they're improving on the process and having more hearings and so forth.
Well, and Brickell City Center was on city-owned land. Was this on privately owned
It
land?
was a private land, yeah.
So, and again, the government, when I was a local government lawyer, I wrote code provisions that said, developers do this, that, and the other thing, and oh, by the way, this doesn't apply to us. So.
As a matter of fact, the developer is currently being sued because one of the pieces of land that he owned, that he bought, is went under foreclosure, and there is something illegal there that wasn't clean or something, so he's being sued. So there's something going on there, but it's a private land.
That's a Miami thing.
It's a, yeah, it's a Miami thing. Any more questions?
Let-
What is it gonna be like finished, or is there timelines that are now?
They broke ground on February this year. They say 2018.
Okay.
part of it is 17 and the final is.
Phases, yeah.
Yeah, it's in a couple phases.
Okay, I think I see some parts of lunch coming in.
We need a break.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I like that.
Takes me out anytime.
Are you?
Only the sound. He didn't realize it out loud. I did it in his head because I was shooting.
Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, for a little bit, because I got put down.
What party coming?
Marathon. I'm probably messing with mine. My parents have a space in their lawn, but I'm actually going down there.
To go off there? We have a place now. I would place them every so often.
Only Marathon. I guess maybe it's in the middle, so if you want to track to Key West.
Island Run just isn't that far of a drive. It's only an hour and a half.
Yeah, like mine, like under an hour if I really want
Yeah,
to.
Key Largo.
Like if I really wanted to get there, I could get there in an hour.
From there, like 2 hours.
Marathon?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess Marathon's a good
When
spot.
you have traffic when you're first going past.
Yeah. And they're not too far from Key West.
my God.
I live out by Weston, so something goes right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, Friday afternoon is tucked up. Like I go in the mornings where I'll stay there like at night and just come back in the morning. Even too far early, I'll just drive in the morning.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. There, so it's like
Throw her in a plane and see what she does.
That's what I'm saying.
Should we do like parallels?
Disagreement. That is very unprofessional. Probably the employee on the period.
It used to be 6. There was a semester where it was 6.
I don't get that. I thought it was 7.5. There should be 7.5 hours. It's on an orientation.
barely
They
makes an hour.
said the whole class day should be 7.5 hours. And it ends
Oh
up
no,
being
it was like 7.5 hours of the actual instruction and now I'm half break.
Oh.
I don't think we really got that hour and a half.
That's
We don't really get breaks.
You guys understand? This is a cakewalk compared to San Miguel.
Oh yeah.
This is an absolute cakewalk.
Wait, I don't think we're taking San Miguel next. Or next.
We are capital markets though in San Miguel.
Oh, that's.
I've got all classes that are in class.
We only do the 2 online.
Like he would small breaks and
Well, I can't do
the
it
entire
back
time.
Saturdays.
You're taking
You
notes.
can't like miss those classes.
You don't miss. Like, I have my 26th birthday and what I'm coming to. Did you try?
Oh.
I'm skipping next weekend, but
That's when you go to class.
yeah.
Which game? I guess the cookie. Yeah, that's how I was going
Check out there. Sorry.
I bet you somebody turned. I bet you I left it in the bathroom. Maybe.
Well, once you go talk to North Carolina.
Yeah, I was waiting for them to come back.
I think they could put their names on the vacations.
Oh, Zach Brown. I think Zach Brown. I did it like on Yeah, I used to work in.
I really just want to take classes, I'm not really looking for like already got a JD.
That's what Anthony did. Anthony already worked in the industry for years. He mentioned certain classes that he wanted to take. And he didn't care about his grade. Like, he failed the accounting course, but he's the only one to do what he wanted to learn.
I have a JD, I don't need
Yeah,
another.
for him, it makes sense to do everything he's doing what he wanted to do.
Like this is a good class. I feel like maybe talking about
They put initials on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great teacher. He's done everything like on the accounting side for the so much.
So why is it on this brand?
that they had a separate.
Oh, wait, they put our initial. They put our initial.
Oh, this is getting smart. I like this.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, they put our initials.
Right?
Yeah, they substitute, huh? Because mine is
Yeah,
a
because
one.
they need. The one they need, they're the one too.
They're an easy part,
I drove it.
right? Like you take it,
Yeah, I
extend it out so long. Well, that's not gonna be
Is there a soup there? Yeah, no, I ordered soup.
What is that?
That's essentially if you're comparing the entitlement process.
I ordered something different.
right? Because it seems
Yeah, but it turns.
like onerous regulation. And so what does anyway?
Sure, what are they?
I mean, I would say
I think this is the wrong box.
yeah, I think that is too. No one's got
This time they did put your initials on them, so. But then again, who knows what each might already grab.
Yeah, someone already grabbed one, I think.
Everybody is supposed to be able to fill out the same set of rules.
And so that's what it's great, yeah. Interesting.
One or two is like my business
Professor, do you have to email our project, our presentation?
Do we know what, does anything look like a tuna fin here?
I ordered a tuna fish was tuna, like, I don't think it came. They're supposed to initial, actually this is for you, right?
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, they're initialing it now, so I'm just trying to figure out.
Mine has a name on it, okay. Good deal. Sometimes it's good to be king.
April 1st, March 30th.
I think this is you. No, I already got mine. Alright. Yeah, I don't know if I want that.
Where's TK?
Right there. Yeah, so with our, it's so much initials backwards today.
It is what it is.
Mine was turkey, not tuna, but that's what I ordered.
It's a hot one. I want to grab one for a second because.
Professor, do you want us to email you the topics that we have for the research paper?
I think most of you already have. You haven't gotten your topic approved yet?
No, I'll send it to you right now. I have it all typed.
I think I told you, Mon, I didn't send it, but I'll do that with you. But I was recording.
Dr. Ford, you have a question about the, what do they call it? Cards, the initials, about the
I ordered those things.
What costs are on
Whatever reason it is.
Second batch still.
I don't know what the problem is. I've inquired about it every single week and all I keep doing
Yo,
is
when
told
we
me
get that,
they're in process.
I don't know.
Okay.
I
have no idea.
No, but that looks really good. I was just gonna trade. It's alright, it's alright. It's not big. Yeah, it's not big.
Yeah.
You got
First
mustard,
batch
something
came,
like
but
that,
I'll
too?
do my second.
Is there mustard? Okay. Okay.
What's going on, boss?
How are you?
Thank you. Oh, you didn't get.
Okay, anybody missing any food? We're all good? Okay.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sweet, okay. I get 4 in San Miguel. We're back to back. What? You guys heard all about 40 coming to San Miguel yet? Yeah, every time
We're having a meeting.
Are you guys like on track?
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna, they changed the program from 18 months to like 12 months. Yeah, so I'll get
Lost that one for good.
I'm done following.
So we're gonna do a quick, the two online and then the San Miguel's capital.
Project here.
So not Dr. Ford.
Yeah.
You already took that?
How do I always end up with the wrong sandwich at the end? Huh?
Did you take it to your name on it?
Yeah, it's a See, there's only one sandwich left.
But I guess I must be mine, but I got.
Oh, okay. Alright. I don't want to steal somebody else's, but there's only one. So.
I'll leave my sandwich.
I didn't. I don't know where it's at.
You lost your phone? Where?
Probably turned in somewhere.
Where? Did you hear from Nick at all?
No. I haven't. So like I said, I think the critical part is coming up with the design, and as I started just really looking at it, I initially went out the wrong way, and I kind of steered this in the wrong direction, because when I looked at the zoning requirements, I was like, why don't we just go max density on everything? But the reality is, the absorption rate is what really should be driving, right? And when I looked at his absorption rates in particular, even though there's a high rent amount that you can get per dollar per square foot, the absorption rate is only 2,000 units, apartments, for the entire city of Miami per year. So he knows, because remember I told you I sent him something? It's like, so with that, like.
Also, the vacancy is increasing on his.
That's right. That's right. It's the exact same reason we can't do office. Right? With a 30% vacancy rate on Biscayne Boulevard, adding any type of office space is not good. I think the hotel, we should, that can be maxed out because of the clustering effect. There's a lot of things. I think we can do residential, but I think the maximum that we could do is 500 units. Right? So that's giving ourselves 1 year of stabilization. So really giving ourselves 2 years, so the capture rate would be at 12.5%. Right? So if it's 2,000 units per year, and we build 500, that's 25%. But I'm really saying that we get 2 years to get leased up based on certificate of occupancy, stabilization, all that stuff. So I'm hoping that we get 2 years to do 500 units, and I think it's potentially doable with some of the comps that he has nearby. And then $40,000. The one area is retail. That continues to be sustainable growth. 40,000 would be a 10% capture rate of the market rate, and I think that's doable in Biscayne. You're in a really good, vibrant part of downtown, on Biscayne corridor. So I think 10% is not unreasonable for that amount. So that's why I went with 40,000. So what I recommend is that we keep the rest of the lots open for future development, but not this current project, right? Like you keep space open so that you may be able to add another residential tower in the future, in another phase of the project, but maybe not this at this point in time. Or maybe that's how we should pitch it, is that each tower of residential should be in phases. And
It should be, 250 to 500, somewhere in there. Because I do think in the area.
But we only did it with 3 acres and nothing is phased out.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But
Such a small
I think our initial, this is the most that can probably fit. We max out the hotel, because I think that's going to get captured no matter what. Our residential is I think 500, and you guys tell me what you think. And Alex, I mean, I sent it to him too, but I think 500. That's stretching ourselves. It really is. It's stretching ourselves significantly on our capture, on what we can capture. But I think it's in a great part of town.
How many square feet is that?
What's that? The max hotel is 319,000 square feet. So we're actually only using half of the land. Yeah, but you're not gonna, I mean, 505 keys, a hotel of 505 keys is a massive. My point is that's about probably as much. It doesn't matter which zone we go with because we're not going to be able to fill it, is my point. We focus too much on zoning because the capture rates don't support
But
the
the
vacancy.
hotel to be maximized needs to be on the density of the
I don't know.
Maximize the hotel.
I don't know that you can put more than 505 keys.
Especially with all the hotels.
Yeah, I mean,
did you see the area yet?
I haven't seen, and the problem is, she said vacancy rates are 80%, but I have 80, not vacancy rates, meaning 80% fill for hotels, which is good. 70
I thought
is
it was
the average.
95, that's where
She
was
said
not
80
clear.
something, I think, on her report. But my point is that, I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but 505 million is already a massive project. And any larger than that, I mean, you would have to build 2 hotels, on the same parcel. And I think our hotels are really only good on that front street, Biscayne. I don't think a hotel on the backside of this sees it, right? And it's hard to get to.
Okay.
I mean, we could go with more hotel, but I would need to see more data. Diana didn't have enough data to back up what the capture rates
She
are.
had the least vacancy, and she was
But
approaching.
vacancy doesn't mean capture, right? So for a hotel. So the reality is like just because 80% across Miami doesn't mean, first of all, it's not near zoned in enough for us. It's our area, because our area could be higher than 80%. 80 was across Miami, and it doesn't tell me, okay, how many annual tourists are coming in. It's more about the capture rate. Like, if we build 1,000, what's that going to do to this area? So like I said with the apartment, if they're only taking 2,000
Hotels in the downtown Miami, they're telling me that they have 95% occupancy. That's like.
But we're not in downtown Miami. We are a couple blocks north. I think that's why I say we need to allow this project in phases to allow more density in the future, because we are going to sell
Go with the new zoning. I agree with you.
Right.
Go with the new zoning and let's maximize hotel. I said that from the beginning.
No, I agree.
In Vegas. Not only that, I also asked the developer and I said, if you had the opportunity,
I don't know what the maximum density for a hotel is.
if you need, no, I don't. That's where
I just worry for the initial, for the project, 505 keys is a massive hotel. I mean, for one hotel, it's a massive hotel. Again, it's like, can we build more residential? Sure, we can build 1,500 units of residential if we want. They're going to go vacant.
I actually didn't want to build any residential.
You didn't want to build any residential?
Because the revenue per square foot from the hotel is very residential. You can't even compare.
You know what I mean?
Right, that part is.
You take it for granted
I
until
was
you're in
saying
the
drop
project.
the residential.
But at least the air conditioning works.
Exactly.
But the underwriters,
to design this, you guys should have come there, your members of your lives. It was an amazing meeting. I said, I'm doing it on your 1700 building.
You were not here, so.
And I said to him, I just don't agree with his types that were done before.
So here's
He
the,
says to me, that's why nobody's building down there.
here's the deal. Our hotel analysis isn't deep enough for me to bet all in on a hotel, because the problem with going with one use is that now you increase the risk of your development. So like if hotels don't pan out, you're bankrupt. Whereas if you spread it to multiple mixed use types, you kind of decrease the risk. Even if we don't get 100% of the residential, if the retail and the hotel do well, it gives us more time to keep the residential going. It just kind of reduces your overall risk if you don't diversify.
Well, actually, if you build it in phases and you only have 3 acres and 3 buildings, it's more expensive than to build them all at once.
Right.
So I wouldn't compromise on that. I would make all of
But
them.
if you can't capture, then there's no, it doesn't matter if you build it. That's my point. You can't capture it. May be
You're saying
cheaper.
postpone.
I'm saying we should put down, this is our initial, this is the initial phase. We cannot justify building further than this until we see more market data in the future. And so we're going to leave vacant lots in our area. We're going to leave open space for potentially future plans if the capture rates continue to trend in the future. But we can't make that determination today. Today, this is what we can build. Based on the current capture rates, we can build, this amount of hotels, and this amount of retail. And he actually mentioned we could put the rest of it as parking, right? Because you do generate money off of parking. So we could create parking lots which don't really affect the, you can easily convert that, right, in the future. And so you can generate money off of parking lots. So that's a good idea. But if we were to just say, hey, we should build it all now, it'll all just go vacant, and there's not, even though it decreases our construction costs, we're not going to get the returns to cover even the basic, and so it's much better to phase it out, decrease the construction costs in the long term, as long as we're getting the right capture rates. We're actually filling what we build. Empty. And that happens all the time in Miami. And Miami is like the perfect place where people build stuff and it just sits empty forever.
That is why there's no construction in the area. All developers have referred to.
Don't say anything bad about mine.
They have stopped building because it's cheaper to keep the property vacant until they see how everything else transpires.
And that's what I'm saying.
So I think we should incorporate it. I don't agree with you.
We just
should build it. I think we shouldn't build at all. And give a plan, suggestion, and say this, we may have 2 ways to go. But no matter what, we need to postpone building like everybody else has done.
I think the capture rate, I think hotel, we can build a hotel. I think we can build some residential, and definitely we can build retail. We can, but it's just not in the quantities that fit on the property. And so we have to, I think the parking thing, we can generate a lot of money. Right? We can generate a lot of money on parking in downtown Miami. And once the World Center is built, like a couple blocks down, was it 5 blocks away? The clustering effect is going to be significant. And that's when you start saying, okay, hey, now it's time to develop the second half of this property. So realistically, this property is probably 2 or 3 phase property. And that's what, maybe we pitch, this is the initial footprint. Here's the amount of land that we're holding on to. We'll collect parking rent from it, and then as we move forward, then we'll sell it. Or we'll develop it, one of the two, right? And we can develop it in the second phase. But I think that's what he's looking for from us is that equilibrium. He keeps saying that equilibrium, and I noticed I was the only one, unfortunately. the office is the one that we're not using is the one, but that's kind of the analysis and the market analysis that we needed to do to say, okay, you know, where are we going to sit on the capture for the entire city?
I don't know which one it is. Which one?
So I took a stab at it. You can take a look at it. Yes.
Just when I think I got them.
I took a stab at the minimum lot sizes and stuff like that. You can look at them. They're open for debate. And so if you want to drop the residential, you know, down some or completely off, I'm definitely open to debate with that. But that, in my mind, just based on the limited knowledge that was like, okay. And one thing is this hotel, we may be able to increase that. Man, I mean, I just don't know how many hotels that are 1,000 feet. Like you said, casinos in Vegas.
Ryan.
And that's all they're putting there.
Oops.
And that's what he said, why he wasn't able to build either.
Right. No, I think it was the other way around. Like, if you wanted to drop a midterm, you could use your final, but not.
So I gotta stick. I thought I would have just went today and see.
You're not gonna.
I want to know who got the 100. What'd you get?
94.
Very good.
You're an adult, I understand you make those decisions. Janae.
Oh, I got a 94. You got 2.7, dude. No, but I missed something on one of the. That's a regulation is not that. How can it be C?
That's what I think. Okay,
Number 4.
Number 4 is F.
No. But a regulatory taking occurs if a regulation does not advance a legitimate. I guess. The way it's worded, it's fine.
I don't get how I got number.
No, it was just like a test, so just two tests, yeah.
Eminent domain is used.
We studied for what?
That's true too.
Pulled it all night or the one that I got out.
Which
I
one?
think we should find it.
Which one?
Number 8.
The second
What did you
one,
get?
we didn't study like that, and we all.
False.
False? Why is it false?
There's an exact phrase in the book.
What
I
does
had
it
a feeling.
say? It says that they can use it.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you read a lot of people.
And she did say it fast too.
So, Tula, so that we are all on the same page. I understand where you're working from about building all the other place.
How much did you get
What?
Tula just wants to drop residential. I even did. You think there's still
I mean, I do like, how long did it take you to do the test?
500 too much?
How long did it take you to do the test?
8 hours.
It took me from when she sent it till
The problem is,
Sunday night at 11 o'clock.
Sunday night.
I sent out the test like around 11 o'clock Sunday morning. I'm working from Sunday morning.
It was very lengthy.
I guess the question is, and listen to her talk about the answers.
Even though it's beyond the capture.
Alright, so what did I
I
miss?
forgot about that. There's also a Publix next door. That strengthens our argument on the residential because there's a Publix next door. That's a That's a huge anchor residential anchor tenant. That's right. That's right. I used to live next to Safeway.
Are you guys talking at the same time? Because I don't know what's happening.
I forgot about that.
I said it last time, man, but if Publix is already in that market.
Why do you have like subgroups? What's happening?
Subgroups.
I didn't know that made sense. I didn't know if that document made sense what I was trying to say about limiting our project based on capture rate and size and all that stuff. And I hit them up on
Have
it
you seen a
before I
neighborhood
wanted.
that Publix doesn't do well into?
What's that?
Publix will do good anywhere.
No. It's a great anchor for residential apartments.
No, but what they're saying is that wherever you see a Publix, that means that Publix did their forecast to show that there's going to be residential in that area.
It already is, that's why they're making.
So the point being is he thinks that there is an argument for it. And he said, I asked him if 500 was too much.
My biggest concern about hotels is that when I look around the area, there's a Sheridan, like a really good Sheridan area. But it's like there's all these hotels in the area, and it's not like small hotels, they're like mega hotels.
What is it, Open across the street or whatever?
Because they're building the convention center huge, okay? And it's going to be a convention city. That's why Genting is there. It's a major convention city. The way I think about it is like a small Las Vegas.
So let's do this. Let's do this. Right, do it.
I mean, why do you think Genting is there?
No. So let's just do this. If you can tell me what the maximum allowable hotel use, we'll use that. We'll throw that in. We'll keep the
I
residential.
would say maximum retail, yes.
And then, I don't know about maximum retail, but I think 10% of the capture rate for retail, it fits our property. 40,000 square feet of retail on a 3-acre lot. I mean, that's pretty good.
You're going vertical.
Not all. So I don't think all our footprint will be 40,000 square feet. I actually don't, because most of our hotel and our apartments are going to be vertical. So I think there will be a small strip.
Picture this though, picture this. This is going to be Las Vegas in a way. When you put residential across from Caesar's Palace, would it be your highest and best use? When Alex is forecasting that the demand is going to go down for residential there?
But he's also saying that there's 2 major residential places down the street. And there's going to be a public
Markets are really big. What I understand is that it's going to be the highest and best use, it could be hotel, but you gotta understand that a hotel as an investment, but there's also very, you want to diversify your investment.
That's what I said.
Residential there is a safe investment because there's one building that's already projecting 400% vacancy. It's been there since 2000. It's sold for 1600 in 2006. It's been there for a while. The second building will be finished in 2016 in May. So they're starting to pop up a bit. The rents there are averaging $2,000 per class B product. The revenue and the rest of Miami is at $1,200. Averaging $2,000 a unit is a great return on your money. And it's that area people are going to want to live in.
Okay, we don't disagree on multi-use. All we're looking really is the percentages of what we're doing.
So we're gonna look at what is the zoning allow, what's the maximum density for hotel zoning allows for hotel. Then and we will build that. And then I think 500 is. Would you say 500 is good enough, or do you want to go lower?
You're going to go lower and just make them better needs. You know?
You want to go 300? Let's just
do 350.
Okay, that's realistically one.
What's that, 350?
350 is about one apartment complex. The 500 that's really probably more like 2 different complexes, or at least 2 buildings, or something of that nature. 350, you could probably fit that into one.
Why are we paying $87 for a lot?
We're not paying
I'll get my own discount.
This is only market for $80 million. We are giving proposal to somebody,
Whoa,
you say,
yeah, but
I think
here's what we think, is that, is it makes sense to buy this piece of property at $80 million, and here's what you can do with it. Or we say, you need to buy property at this amount, this dollar, this project makes sense.
you gotta go back to our, we gotta figure out what's the highest we feel.
This deal isn't going, this makes sense. This year alone. That's all we're trying to, right now, it's
And you know that, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the studies and what I spoke to Bernard 2 days ago, he said that's why no one is building this. They're waiting to see what transpires and what directions they go. We have to do this here.
the plan is in place in 2021.
Excuse me.
The three reports have been approved are going to go until 2021. Okay, so you can buy this property, do nothing with it for 6 years, and you can start appealing to it. Secondly, all we have to do is we can say no, we can say wait, and we can say go. We don't have to.
There is
If we go that approach, we say, wait, no matter what, at least 2 years, but give two different plans, because I
But
believe
if
we
you
have
start
two
construction
directions
now,
here.
it doesn't come online until 2020. I mean, if you started the process now, if you say Miami World Center is coming online in 2018, right? 2018 is the World Center, the one down the street. If we wait, it'll be too late. We'll miss that, right? So, but the people who get in first when it starts,
There's 70
they win.
proposed projects in that area that are proposed. None of it came on. But we don't have to figure out exactly how many units this or that. We need to figure out if it makes sense to build or not. If we come in and say, does it make sense for now, and here's why.
If we run these numbers
And then,
and it says, and it doesn't make sense, then we can say it's not a feasible project because this is all we can capture for a period. If that increases later on, then maybe we can change that, but given the current variable of our capture rates and our equilibrium
the
and,
cost is $80 million.
right, and this is how much we can afford. Now, if the numbers do run and it says that 80 million is good, then we should say, hey, it's worth it, you know?
So if we were developers, what would be our strategy? To have a proposed
So right now, the total construction cost of that is about 160. So you add 80 to 160, and then you do a backdoor thing and say,
Can we justify?
can we do it?
Can we send $240 million to get this done?
I mean, realistically, $240 million for a project like that scope, that's not unrealistic. That's within the ballpark. I just don't know if it's.
It depends what every developer is going to do in the area too, and which
Well, but we already know, we
Okay,
know
let's try to get back to the class.
We know there's a hotel cluster right there.
I think that we should spread also the pieces of what, because it's going to.
Let's do some housekeeping and talk about the final.
That's driving the
Yes.
I have done myself no favor by allowing you all to turn in your papers on the last class day, but I wouldn't change that on you now. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get all of your finals and your papers graded in a week after the final class. I'm sure you have a suggestion. Why don't we just...
Can't do a favor. Hand it early. I'm not gonna ask for extra credit or anything, but I'm saying if we finish it, can we just hand it in early so that gives you a chance to
Sure, yeah, if you get your paper done early and you want to email it to me, I would welcome that. But I'm not going to change anything about the due date of that because I'm sure you're all planning your effort accordingly. So let's talk about the final exam. The way that we did the midterm, was that manageable for most of you? Okay.
I have a question.
No?
If we are happy with our midterm grade, can we waive the final exam?
No, the final is cumulative. The final will be cumulative. There will be material. Part of our last class we'll spend doing that interactive exercise that I talked about, but there will probably be some additional lecture material in the last class, and I have not decided how much of that's gonna go on the final, but and what is, you know, maybe I just don't know the rules. As far as you all are aware, can we do the final after the last class, or do I need to have you guys do the final and get it?
That's fine. As long as the grades are in.
What are you doing with your other class? What are they doing?
We'll be done with that.
We have project, it's just a.
Yeah, we presentation.
I do have one suggestion. I'm not sure if anyone else, for people who work, it was difficult to get it on the Sunday because you really only had that afternoon to, you know, and I'm not gonna, you know, Sunday football, whatever. But you know, that Sunday going into Monday, I really know, and I'm sure if you're working on Monday, it was pretty much impossible to kind of do any work on that Monday. So it was really, you only had that afternoon on Sunday to get it done. So if there's a way to maybe issue it on a Friday and give you the, you know, the Saturday morning or something where you have that time, I don't know. I just found it difficult to go rolling into a Monday.
And I guess what I'm asking is, are you expecting that your work effort on the class will end when we adjourn on Saturday, or are you expecting it to extend into the next week?
No, why would it extend?
Extending the next week is fine, you know, that's fine.
I don't, and it may be some rules of the program that I'm not, I have 1 week to get your grades in, so we need to do.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Is the final gonna take us the same, it took me 8 hours to do?
Yeah.
Is it gonna take, I'm sorry, I'm not that smart. No, but is it gonna take just as long?
It's gonna cover more because it's gonna be cumulative, but what I'm not gonna do is, I'm gonna have more of the multiple choice and less of the short answer. Because I won't have time to read them.
How about all
And I've
multiple
considered, I
choice?
have an associate at work, and I've considered making her grade your papers, but it just didn't seem nice.
Can we do a multiple choice? Make it simple?
Well, I believe me, it's simpler for me too, except that I have to write them fairly, and I'm sure you feel I didn't write all of them fairly, but, so.
Who thinks that? Nobody said that.
What I've done in the past has been just like the midterm. It's been an open book, working on your own, but open book take home, due within 24 hours. But I'm open to ideas.
I'm kind of with the comment that was just made Sunday, but what if we had a distributor after class Saturday, do end of day Sunday?
Exactly.
All day Saturday you can knock it out, or first thing Monday, Sunday morning.
Does that work? If you take it, if I issue it at the end of class on Saturday and it's due 24 hours later, does that work?
Yep.
No.
I mean, can we do Sunday night? Like we do it Saturday noon, Saturday after class, and we do it like Saturday, I don't know, Sunday.
Okay.
Sunday at midnight.
Yeah, like 28 hours.
Some people are.
28 hours.
What if I issue it on Saturday and you have 2 days? So if we issue it at 5 o'clock on Saturday, you have until 5 o'clock, or maybe I could even do it Saturday night at 8 o'clock, and you've got Monday night 8 o'clock.
Monday night?
I like that.
Let's do that.
Yes.
More time?
That was very generous.
So you got Monday.
Well, that's what, maybe I issued it a little earlier than I expected, than I said I would, so maybe I'll issue it at 5 and you'll have it until 8 o'clock on Monday.
So that would be 10/17, 10/19.
Saturday,
10/17, 10/19.
Yeah, so Saturday the 17th at 5 o'clock, and it'll be due Monday the 19th at 8 o'clock.
And after I did it, I ended, I finished at 6 o'clock in the morning.
And if there will be, I'll cover as much material as I can with with multiple choice questions so that we all can live to see another day without our eyes. Not that I didn't, reading your writing was very interesting. I learned some things, so I'm looking forward to your papers.
What did you learn?
I don't know. But actually, back onto happier topics, I learned a lot from your presentations, and I appreciate the level of effort you all put into those case studies. Did you find them to be helpful?
Absolutely.
Do you feel like you have a theory and as applied, and you can start to understand how land use regulation affects the entitlement process?
It was a bit of a practice.
Good. Good. It was the fact that this course is scheduled now and more in the fall. In the past, we've done it in the summer when local governments tend to shut down and there aren't very many public hearings. I probably could have, if I'd looked ahead, gotten us all to a public hearing on the final approval of a project somewhere, and I might do that. I might try to schedule that a little better in the future. But as some of you saw, it's very easy for a project to be deferred multiple times. For example, I've been doing diligence for an investor on a project that's located within 2 different municipalities. One of the municipalities is really the bulk of the project, so that's where all of the benefit goes, all of the tax base. The other part is simply an access strip, no improvements, no benefit. So the approval by that city was deferred 5 times, and by the time they got their last approval, they had persuaded the other city to give up 7.6% of the tax revenue associated with the project to them, and the developer had agreed to a $500,000 contribution for whatever the city wanted to use it for.
What city?
I'm not going to tell you, because I don't know if it's right. But it was, so deferral, it's very hard to schedule in a short class to make sure that we can all sit in on a public hearing. But for your colleagues coming down the line, I'll try to do it. Yeah.
Application. Like 500,000 requests to be used for whatever they decide. Isn't that what we talk about with the nexus, what they're doing?
I would say that would fail a rational nexus test, but it was a voluntary contribution. There you go.
Grease the wheels.
A voluntary contribution. It was indeed. And I've never ever in my life seen that happen where the taxes for improvements made within one municipal jurisdiction, a portion was shifted to another. But they can agree, 2 local governments can agree between them who is going to do what they both have the power to do. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Both local governments have the ability to regulate, impose, and so as between them they agree, you run the bus, I'll run the parks, or whatever. Because they both have the power to run a bus system and a park system. So they allocate between them in an interlocal agreement how they're going to do that, and that's essentially how this was styled. Interesting, huh? Okay. So we've figured out the final. And I'll get your papers on the last class day. And that will be the plan.
And the finals is cumulative,
the final,
class 1 through class 4.
Yes, yes. All right.
Did you say in the beginning we can keep the best grade?
You can, if you do better on the final, I will replace your midterm grade with the final grade, so you get it duplicated. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay?
It's not the other way around.
No, right. It's not the other way around because the final is going to count no matter what because it's cumulative. If you got a B on the midterm and you get an A on the final, you'll get 2 A's.
Yes.
If you got a C on the midterm and you get an A on the final, you get 2 A's.
Okay.
Okay?
How about if you got an A on the midterm and a B on the final?
You'll get an A on the midterm and a B on the final.
So what's the sense?
This is like, you guys are like a logic. You're trying to fool me.
I was trying to go class. I put together a grade. Final grade is more
The final grade is, what did I say, 30% on the final, 20?
30-30 for the exam and 20-20 on the.
Oh, no, each, the midterm and final are okay, we're gonna do a little bit of review. I'm not sure that you need it, but, let's walk through. We're in Florida. I've been trying to widen this discussion to go beyond Florida for people who are not as a little bit more, but we're still talking about comprehensive planning in a Florida context. And remember the statute that mandates that local governments adopt comprehensive plans, Chapter 163, I think it's Part 2 of the Florida statutes. There are required elements. Again, this is all review. Land use, capital improvements, transportation, all of these. There are required maps that must be adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, future land use map, and natural resources map, historic resources and special transportation areas are typical. Consistency, this is one of those magic terms. You know, that police power is regulating for the public health, safety, and welfare, those are magic words. Magic words with comprehensive planning is the term consistency. The plan must be consistent with the state and regional plans, and all elements must be consistent with each other, and all land development regulations must be consistent with the plan, and all development orders must be consistent with the plan. There are other agencies that participate in the comprehensive planning process to some extent, and the regulatory process, right? U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Environmental Protection, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. These are not, I'm not going to test you on these acronyms. Water Management Districts, Department of Health, at the transportation level, the U.S. DOT, the Florida DOT, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and local expressway authorities can sometimes participate in the crafting of the comprehensive plan for their regulatory jurisdiction and their facilities that exist subject to the comprehensive plan. Schools, counties, each county has its own school district, and there is school concurrency now, so they have to be in the business of measuring the impact of development, of proposed development, and evaluating whether their school facilities can accommodate additional students. Plans must be based upon professionally accepted data and analysis, which is something that the comprehensive planning statute added that never really existed in a mandatory way with the adoption of zoning regulations. Plan amendments in Florida are done in 2 phases. There's a proposed phase and an adoption phase. You need hearings at each phase. For most plan amendments, after adoption, the Department of, I keep saying DOE instead of DEO, the Department of Economic Opportunity can challenge an amendment, or an affected person can request a hearing. The hearing happens before an administrative law judge. Implementation of comprehensive plans is primarily through zoning, or in a broader term, land development regulations. There is most often another map. It doesn't have to be another map. There's usually a separate zoning map, separate from the future land use map, and some kind of zoning code or unified land development regulations or land development code.
You said it was DEO?
It is Department of Economic Opportunity.
Okay.
Yes.
Under the transportation approval process, I would have thought that transit facilities would be consulted, and I didn't see that.
The transportation element, I would have to look at the requirements in the statute for, they probably do have to address transit. If there's a transit system in the jurisdiction, they probably do have to address transit within the context of the transportation element, as well as streets and bicycles and such now.
Especially with the concept now, a new movement now is complete streets. And that concept requires transit and transportation facilities.
Yes, and treating, and have you ever heard any of the folks from like the Seattle and Oregon areas talking about transportation planning out there? They tend to be a little bit more ahead of us on planning issues. And the revolutionary concept that we should be more concerned with people than cars. You know, and in reality for transportation planners, that is a very dramatic shift.
And that is the whole movement behind complete streets.
Yes, yes. So variances. Variances have existed in the old zoning code since the early 20th century. It's a way to get an exception from the strict application of a zoning provision. But they have very strict criteria, they're hard to win. And the most difficult is demonstrating some sort of unique hardship that is not self-imposed. Again, this is all a review. Site plans. This is a primary procedure that a city staff will use to review a proposed development. There'll be a mandatory site plan requirement. Site plans can be conceptual or very detailed. More and more and more detail is being required in urban areas to be included in a site plan, all the way down to floor plans of architectural floor plans and renderings and color schemes and material boards. I've seen all of these things at the site plan level. The typical procedure is some sort of comprehensive staff review. They'll call it a development review committee, a technical advisory committee, where your plan is reviewed by all the different agencies. They make comments, you revise to address the staff comments and resubmit, and then there's some kind of public hearing before a board. Sometimes you go to an advisory board before you go to the city commission or the county commission to get a final approval. Planned development districts. You are all experts on planned development districts now. You understand they can provide a great deal more flexibility, but they are supposed to also provide more benefits for the community. Flexibility, relief from the strict application of zoning criteria, but the other side of that balance needs to be improved design, higher quality development, benefits for the community. They're project specific. Some of them, and I don't remember, I didn't address it here in this review, some of them are a rezoning of the dirt. Some of them are an overlay on top of an underlying old existing zoning. So you need to understand when you're dealing with one, which kind you're going to get. Because one of them might last forever and the other one might last for only a few years. Non-conformities, we've covered this already. Legal, it's a provision when a development complied with the zoning code at the time it was constructed, but then the code changed, and it's now no longer in conformity. Legal non-conformities are generally permitted to continue, subject to casualty provisions or modification. Like if you change it more than 50%, 60%, 70%, or there's a casualty that affects it to the tune of 50, 60, 75% of the value, you can lose the non-conforming status. So that's if you're contemplating the acquisition of an existing development and you discover that you're doing your due diligence and you discover that there are existing non-conformities, you need to understand what your ability to reconstruct would be in the event of a threshold casualty, and that should factor into your underwriting, basically your financial analysis. If the density changes, if it has been downzoned essentially, and you've got something with 100 units, but if you have a casualty, you can only rebuild 25, that's going to change the revenue stream that you might anticipate from that project. So you need to bear that in mind when you're contemplating taking on debt to buy the property. Okay, we're going to start subdivision regulations. Plats. We talked about this. So there's a chapter, there's a statute in Florida, there's probably a statute in most states that says what the minimum requirements are for a plat, which is a picture and a description of land to be recorded in the public records. Subdivision regulations are used by local governments also to ensure that there is adequate, safe access and essential services available to the land when it's developed.